Breaking news, FBI Director Christopher Wray has announced his plans to resign. During an internal town hall, Wray told employees that, quote, after weeks of careful thought, I've decided the right thing for the Bureau is for me to serve until the end of the current administration in January and then step down, end quote. Wray's resignation comes after threats from President-elect Trump that he would fire the FBI director. The post will be vacant after January, allowing Trump's nominee Kash Patel to fill the director role if confirmed. The killing of a healthcare insurance CEO in New York last week is leading to fears that other corporate executives could be targets of violence. Hit lists of top health insurance industry officials are circulating online, and wanted posters featuring corporate executives are being posted around Manhattan. The New York Police Department issued a bulletin yesterday warning of the threats. Meanwhile, health insurance companies say they are stepping up security. Joining us to discuss this and more, Niall Stanage, White House columnist here at The Hill. Now, in this new environment, do you think executives will step back from further view? Will there be actions taken to maybe shield compensation rates for top executives?
I think there could be some stepping back from public view, but I think the more immediate pressing concern is just what level of security is required. Obviously, in a free society, you can't walk around in a completely fortified bubble every day unless you're the President of the United States or unless you have the wealth of maybe a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. But will it be more commonplace for top-line executives in industries that are rightly or wrongly controversial to have a security detail, or will people view what has happened here to Brian Thompson as something of an aberration that is, of course, tragic that when anyone loses their life violently, but doesn't really bespeak the need for greater security?
A man was arrested yesterday on Capitol Hill after allegedly assaulting Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Mace was seen in a sling on Capitol Hill today. She says she was attacked over her fight to protect women. The incident happened at an event to celebrate federal support for foster care individuals in foster care. Now, the Washington Post has this report that they spoke to a witness who allegedly saw the interaction between Mace and the suspect. The witness said this was a normal handshake, and the suspect was asking Mace to support trans youth in foster care. How did Nancy Mace become such a lightning rod when it comes to women's issues and trans issues?
Well, particularly because of her leadership on a bill that sought to ban either members of Congress or Capitol Hill staff from using any bathroom that did not comport with their biological sex at birth. Now, this is, and Nancy Mace has stated this plainly herself, this is aimed at Congresswoman-elect Sarah McBride, Democrat from Delaware, who is the first openly transgender person elected to Congress. Nancy Mace pushed that bill, continues to do so, and she is someone who is certainly no shrinking violet herself, so she has been very high profile on the topic. We all know that the trans issue elicits enormously strong emotions, and so that's where we are here.
She was once considered one of the more moderate members of the Republican Party, but has really gone after this issue as something that she wants to highlight in her profile. Does that say anything to you about the saliency of the trans issue, both in the Republican Party and among the broader populace?
I think it probably has become more salient, especially among the conservative base. Now, you're quite right, Congresswoman Mace at one point sort of declared herself a supporter or champion of the LGBTQ community. I'm not sure if she would describe herself that way right now because of this bill that she has proposed. More generally speaking, she has been somebody who I think has adopted a more conservative social stance, and to me that is emblematic of how the Republican Party has moved on that topic.
President-elect Trump has nominated Andrew Ferguson to take over the Federal Trade Commission. He is currently a commissioner, conservative commissioner on the commission. According to the New York Times, Ferguson is expected to continue scrutiny of tech companies, especially when it comes to free speech issues, but take a lighter approach on things like AI and corporate mergers. He would replace Lina Khan, who's kind of gone to war against Microsoft, Amazon, and Meta over these antitrust issues. That actually won her some admiration from some on the right. They called them conservatives, Josh Hawley, J.D. Vance, among them. I wonder if you think this signals that the Trump administration and Trump himself is not as inclined to pursue the maybe economic populism that he espoused on the campaign when it comes to concrete policy decisions.
I think you can certainly read it that way. This is a more traditional Republican choice. And it was really interesting how Lena Khan did draw support from people like J.D. Vance, because it pointed to the more populist wing of the Republican Party, which I think is skeptical not just of big tech, but of sort of corporate conglomeration. Now, that has not been the traditional view of the Republican Party, which has been a very business-friendly, anti-regulation, broadly, party. And so the fact that Trump hasn't, chosen to, for example, continue with Lena Khan or appoint someone in that lineage so much, I think is significant.
Do you think there could be any pushback within the movement on Capitol Hill to somebody like Ferguson? I mean, Josh Hawley was blocking his confirmation when Biden appointed him to the commission in the first place.
I think people could be vocal about it, but I think this is part of the broader battle for what direction the Trump administration is going to go in once the president-elect comes into power, because we do see among very, very MAGA-type choices across the board. There are also more conventional choices. Marco Rubio is the nominee for Secretary of State, for example. So the more conventional or establishment Republican Party still has a voice here. How angrily will the MAGA people react against that? Will they try to marginalize those voices, whether it's Rubio or Ferguson? We shall see. I do think it's one of the most interesting kind of elements in our current politics.
Trump has announced 2 new ambassadors for his administration: Kimberly Guilfoyle, ambassador to Greece; Tom Barrack, ambassador to Turkey. Guilfoyle is a Fox News host, was engaged, I guess, to Donald Trump Jr. I don't know, that seems to be in question at the moment. Barrack is a wealthy businessman, longtime friend of Trump. Is this regular level of rewarding friends and political allies, or is Trump taking this to a new level?
I think he is taking it to a new level. Now, defenders of the president-elect would talk about the fact that ambassadorships in particular have tended to be posts that are filled with campaign donors, loyalists, and so on and so forth. But if you look at Trump's appointments in a broader sense, people like, say, Kash Patel, Pete Hegseth, these are people who are really characterized primarily by support for Trump himself rather than for a kind of conventional conservatism or republicanism. And then when you get these plum jobs going to people like Kimberly Guilfoyle, I think that sort of underscores that idea.
And Guilfoyle, I mean, she was a Fox News host. I think in past administrations you have business leaders, people with international business experience and some kind of a geopolitical bent prior to it. To me, it's unclear if somebody like Guilfoyle has that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not what exactly her expertise is beyond the media sphere is not really clear. Media skills are important. I think you could argue that Trump has chosen people from the media in part because of their communication skills, in part for their capacity to get their message across in this modern age. But what her qualifications are to be ambassador to Greece aren't clear.
I want to talk to you a little about foreign policy. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is heading to Israel today. It looks like he's going to be trying to make a final push for some kind of a ceasefire deal in Gaza between Hamas and Israel. Where are we at in those negotiations? It doesn't seem like much progress has been made. Is there any chance that this final push could bear fruit?
I am pessimistic about that. I mean, I think we have been told several times in the past that we're on the brink of a ceasefire and it hasn't happened. I would also say that right now, to me, the incentives don't line up, because if you were Benjamin Netanyahu, I think you would probably prefer to wait until a Trump administration took office. You would feel that you would get a more sympathetic hearing. Now, people on the left of the Democratic Party would complain that the Biden administration has been too sympathetic to Netanyahu as it is, but I find it difficult to see a ceasefire being arranged in the next few weeks.
Let's talk about Syria. There's a power vacuum currently in that country after the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. Israel has been striking inside the country, Turkey, United States. What do you foresee as the decisions that are going to be made over the next few months that will determine the trajectory of what's happening there?
Well, from an American perspective, one obvious decision that has to be made is there are about 900 US troops in Syria. What is going to happen to them? Do we keep them there? Do we bring them back? Do we increase their number? But in the broader sense, what you have, I mean, I don't think anyone mourns the loss of Bashar al-Assad, who was a brutal authoritarian. But the problem is the danger of the country just disintegrating in his absence, because you have several different leaders, several different factions. You have the Kurdish faction, you have the faction that emerged from Al-Qaeda, but now sort of disavows that. And then you have tribes in the southern Syria who all have their own bailiwick that they're trying to strengthen. So it's very difficult to see how you get national cohesion out of such a confusing picture.
As we've learned over the past 20 years, the ousting of a brutal dictator doesn't always lead to a better situation. Niall, Stanage, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Drew.
While President-elect Trump is ready to seal the border on day one, his new border czar, Tom Homan, has already warned migrants in the U.S. illegally to self-deport ahead of time. According to border authorities, some migrants are taking that warning seriously. News Nation's Ali Bradley has the latest on self-deportation and the consequences migrants who do so will face.
Yeah, and it's interesting here because some migrants who are actually going through their asylum proceedings are cutting things short and leaving before there's even an opportunity to be removed under the new incoming administration. So migrants are actually finding Border Patrol agents or CBP officers, and they're asking them if they can leave the country. Here's the deal, though. Because these individuals are in legitimate legal proceedings, DHS really has no bearing here. They're in the court's hands right now, so all CBP really can do is advise that they walk back to Mexico through a port of entry. One man from Venezuela told agents he was trying to get out before Trump gets in, and he says he heard there was an agreement with Mexico and Venezuela where they are helping get people back to their home countries. Now, Venezuela has not taken deportation flights back from the U.S. for nearly a year. Mexico does have a better working relationship with the country and Maduro, so that could be a possibility for this young migrant. Now, when we called his stepfather in Pennsylvania, who confirmed the migrant went back to Mexico to continue his journey back to Venezuela, he says that he called him through Mexican immigration. Interesting here because they are in proceedings already. They are not necessarily self-deporting, they're self-departing. However, an immigration attorney that we talked with says this move is essentially the same thing because they essentially issue a deportation order against themselves when they leave, and they will likely have an issue coming back in for their hearing if they have one.
They are probably not going to be able to get back in to reapply or to start the process over. It's in many of these, asylum included, you kind of get one chance. And if you give up halfway through, you don't get to come back and ask for asylum again. You'll be put into a different type of proceeding and you won't have asylum available to you.
Now, of course, Drew, all of this comes as President-elect Trump is promising those mass deportations on day one. A lot of the migrants that we talk with, they say they're concerned and they're worried, but they also are convinced that they're going to go after those with a criminal history or a final order of removal first, so they may have an opportunity to stay here. Now, the immigration attorney tells us that she does not see this becoming a big trend because migrants are paying attention, and if they are, they likely won't leave on their own accord because that would end any opportunity that they have here in the United States, Drew.
News Nation's Ali Bradley, thank you. The Supreme Court has dismissed an appeal by tech giant Nvidia after the computer chip maker was sued for misleading its investors. The suit, brought by a Swedish firm, alleges Nvidia company executives did not properly disclose to investors the extent to which its sales depended on cryptocurrency miners. Nvidia appealed, saying the initial suit did not meet the legal bar set by a 1995 law meant to prevent frivolous securities litigation. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court issued a one-sentence opinion dismissing the appeal as improvidently granted, indicating the court believes it shouldn't have taken up the appeal in the first place. This is the second time in recent weeks the justices dismissed a securities suit appeal. Last month, the court dismissed Facebook's appeal in a class action case brought by its investors over the Cambridge Analytica scandal. The court's decision now allows the suit against Nvidia to move forward in a lower court. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.